Okay, we're live. Okay. So, we do try to do different things at this conference, actually. Last year, I think we did it all the same. But this year, we decided that we've got Carl here, so we should make use of him. And first to say, I'm delighted that you're here, Carl. Thanks for coming.
Glad to be here, Pat. You know that.
I know that. Yeah. Am I getting feedback off this mic? Or? Yeah. So, what are you up to, Carl, at the moment? Is my first. I have the privilege of the first question. What are you up to? I know what you should have been up to, but I failed to deliver, so I'm sorry about that.
First of all, thank you all for being here, and it's good to be here. Come back to Liverpool, one of my favorite cities. Such a working class city. I feel at home at this place and at this conference. Pat asked me to come, and I was thinking that I really don't have anything new to say. I think I've been here, 3 years in a row and given talks, and it's like I'm tired of hearing myself talk, quite frankly. So Pat asked, what have I been up to? I'm like you all. I've been shocked by the current election in the U.S. I was shocked by Brexit. What have I been up to? I'm in therapy. That's what I'm. But actually, during the election, the U.S. election, I was in New York, and that night, the entire city just seemed to be in this collective depression, and people were walking around almost shell-shocked, it appeared to be. But the next morning at 8:30, I had to teach my class, and I had to go in and face these young people who were so excited about the possibility of having the first female president in the U.S., and they were dejected. But then I was thinking about 8 years earlier, going into that same class with different group of students, and saying, we have a new president, and they erupted in excitement. And then going in after Trump was elected and how dejected they were. And then I was thinking about the metrics of determining progress, particularly in the area that we care about, drug policy, and how the country views drugs. Under the Obama administration, the 8 years under the Obama administration, I think about how much progress we made. There was some progress, very little actually. But for some reason, the progressives act as if there's been a tremendous amount of progress made. Really not much progress was made. I mean, there were some things that happened. For example, in the United States, we passed this law that decreased the disparity between violations for crack cocaine and powder cocaine. Crack cocaine was punished at 100 times more harshly than powder cocaine. In 2010, President Obama signed into legislation law that decreased that disparity from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. Now, a few people don't seem to remember that one of the major people negotiating with in Congress and with Obama for this law was Jeff Sessions. And the law, Jeff Sessions, of course, is President-elect Trump's nominee for the Attorney General. And his record from 1986, or his statements of racial comments, have come into play. But Jeff Sessions had been in our Congress for years, and people didn't seem to be concerned about this person who the Obama administration negotiated with the Obama administration to pass the crack powder reform law. 18 to 1, the law shouldn't be 18 to 1, it should be 1 to 1. There should be no disparity. But the Obama administration took credit for this as it was a victory. And the progressives, too, acted as if this was a victory while negotiating with Jeff Sessions, who they're now complaining about. So it just blows my mind that the progressives fell asleep during the Obama administration. And not only did they fall asleep, they became protective, as opposed to providing a critique, a critical analysis of what was happening under the Obama administration. So now that I think about how the world looks under Trump, for our purposes, I mean, there are so many other issues that we should be concerned about, like war, immigration, all of those sorts. But just in terms of for our purposes, I'm actually kind of excited about the Trump presidency. I'm excited because maybe now the progressives will get back the fuck to work. Maybe we will now have a critique of the president that we didn't have previously, where we should have. And so I'm excited, and as a result of what I've been up to, Pat, I'm working on 2 books, trying to write some things that move people, things that are smart, things that people will want to read, and trying to just continue to struggle and trying to make you all proud, trying to make people for whom I care proud. That's what I've been up to.
Thanks, Carl. Okay, look, I'm going to throw it open now. Just going to have one little rule. You get one shot, okay? You get one shot at this. And you can have a follow-up, but once you've had your go, because I want to try and get as many people who want to speak, ask Carl a question, So, Alison.
Hi, Carl.
Hi, Elsa.
Just try, if you can, to imagine what Trump's going to do and give us a brief little picture of what you think is going to happen during his term. If he gets a term and isn't impeached before office, obviously.
Yeah, Alison, that's a tough question, and it's one of these things that I try to stay away from, like these predictions. No, it's okay. It's a fair question, actually. But I try to stay away from the predictions because, let's just take the election, for example, in the U.S. There were so many people in the media and the pollsters, and they made all these predictions, and they said that Hillary would win. Not only win, she'd win big in many cases. And they were fucking wrong. But that's not even the worst part. They were wrong, and they're still in the public eye making predictions, and we still listen to them as if they have some skill set. And so as I think about what the president-elect will do, I have no idea. And frankly, it doesn't even matter to me because my work continues. Drugs are still illegal, and as long as they are illegal and they are still viewed, drug users are still viewed in a certain negative light, as long as that continues, my work doesn't change. And I don't expect that to change. And so that means that I got work to do. That's all it means.
Hi, Carl.
Hello.
Hi, Carl.
Hello.
There's a button on it with mute written on it. Just press it till they...
That's better. Hi, Carl, yeah. For the 7th time. Anyway, yeah, this is a bit of a mad one. End of the day. Don't you think it's quite ironic how over your side of the pond, they thought Clinton was going to win. And over our side of the pond, we thought they were going to get voted in for EU. And then, so many months later, Farage and Trump like that. Do you think there's something going on there that the press over your side of the pond, the press on our side of the pond, don't know about? What do you think?
As I tried to allude to in my last response, I think that the people who disseminate information widely, and the press is included, are not the best and the brightest. And we listen to them as if they are. And we listen to them without a critical analysis. And so I think that as long as we don't require them to be better, this is what we will get. And so I think we need to ask ourselves, when we have people presenting programs in our media, our newspapers, wherever, here, even in these spaces, wherever, we need to ask the qualifications of the people with the mic. And we need to really critically analyze their qualifications and then determine whether or not we should listen. If we're not doing that as a listening public, then shame on us too. I hope that helps.
Someone else? Don't be shy. Yes, Andrea.
So, in response to that,
Would you please not use the term drug addict? No, I'm just fucking with you.
I'll try not to. Can I just explain that, actually? For me, it's
Please,
a bit about laziness.
I was joking, by the way.
I know you were. Anyway, look, it's a long story, all that, so let's not go there.
I would never tell you, Andrea. I'd tell him off for you, though.
Fair enough. Yeah, about the media. It seems to me that I'm just thinking back to Occupy, and when we occupied the forecourt of St. Paul's Cathedral, and how for about a month we were the bee's knees and the community worked very well together, and it was absolutely amazing. And how, in the end, it turned into, I mean, not only the activists got really tired and put themselves through too much, but the media was absolutely vicious. And it was the mainstream media, and it was what most people read and heard. So yes, shame on them, but I think that there needs to be an attitude from us, this is just my opinion for what it's worth, which is to say that, and this is what I tell myself, because otherwise I just want to jump off Suicide Bridge, is that the vast majority of people are just basically, you know, especially now in this country, fighting for their bread and water and their kids and getting them into schools and their uniforms and yada, yada, yada. And they don't really have time to get analytical about the media. And the media are very good. I've just told you outside about Owen Jones, who, you know, is excellent at helping us to look at how we are divided as people who are shut upon from a great height, as in what was the working class, which Deborah earlier called those who work for their money. So I can't really, I'm not to say that we aren't responsible for thinking and learning, because I think probably we really are. But I think that the vast majority, my sense is that the vast majority of people are too busy surviving, and that is part of the plot. Excuse me if I sound paranoid. In the old days, when I was a young Marxist, people used to talk about the plot, and I used to go, what the hell are you talking about? Now I realise they were absolutely spot on. There really is a plan here, and they've gotten hold of it. You know, and they're acting it out, and over time it's just got worse and worse and worse, so that we see the inequality which has gone off. Anyway, we've had this conversation, but that's my response to what you're saying, and I'm interested in what you've got to say about that.
Well, shit, Andrew, I don't know exactly what I don't know what you're asking on the one hand, because, yeah, I'm clueless. What are you asking?
Basically saying that it seems to me that the vast majority of people do not spend their time like we do in endless political meetings trying to save lives, etc., etc. What they're trying to do is just earn their bread and water, and they don't care. It's like they play safe. It's like the harm reduction movement. We are risk takers. It's not just the drug users in this movement who are risk takers. It's all of us, because we're trying to, you know, evolve humanity here, right? We're trying to say, actually, drug use should never have been criminalized in the first place. And the reasons that it was criminalized were corrupted reasons, and they weren't the reasons that most people have been brainwashed with, which is to protect the vulnerable, etc., etc. So that I think that it is very easy for people to just, what's the word? Osmosis. They assimilate, that mainstream media and just believe it.
Sure.
When actually
Okay.
how many people are going to really, stand up and fight back?
Gotcha.
He's got it.
So, as I think about just folks who are trying to make it, just trying to make it in their day, and how do we influence them, particularly when they need to pay their bills, and what role how can we get in? All right. When I think about this room, and I think about what's said in these kind of spaces, what we talk about, there are things that we say that contributes to our subjugation. We do it all the time. And so the media says some of these things, and then they think that they're being progressive. Now, let me give you an example, a specific example. I think I heard the term implicit bias used here, right? We try and explain racial discrimination and those sorts of things. We all think that's like a great term. That term actually it contributes to our subjugation. Let me tell you why. Implicit bias has nothing to do with the racial discrimination that happens in terms of policing. Absolutely nothing. But what it does is that it sucks the energy and all of the sort of air out of the room. We focus on implicit bias, as opposed to calling a spade a spade. Like, racial discrimination is kind of simple. It's this disproportionate negative impact on specific racial groups. That's it. Not what you think. I don't care what why you do it, right? But when we have implicit bias, what we do is we soften the blow. They didn't know. Who gives a fuck? I don't care if they didn't know. And not only that, when you look at implicit bias in the lab and in the research, it's basically just memory. These memory things, you're sort of responding to words. What does that have to do with the police officer who consistently go after this community, who is consistently told to go after this community, that resources are placed in that community? Has nothing to do with implicit bias. But yet that's all we talk about, or many of us we talk about. And we can go on about some of these other things, our assumptions about drug use. Like when I ask people to come out of the closet about their drug use. Why wouldn't you? You're not doing anything wrong, right? That's right. And then we say, and I do understand some people are put at risk. I understand that completely. There are people with small children, and they would be happy to take away your children. You have no resources for lawyers and so forth. And those people, they are the most vulnerable. And we don't really want to have people's children take away. But many of us, like me, I have children who are older. There is risk for me saying that, yeah, I use heroin, I use this drug, I use that drug. Of course there's risk. But if I'm not willing to take a risk, well, who will be willing to take a risk? And when there is injustice, we need people to take risk. And so we need to push and push. And we need to even push people on our side. Like I started by saying, when Obama was in office, we went to sleep. We didn't have a critique of him that we should have had of him. Because when you look at the numbers, people are still being arrested in the United States. And we still have these awful drug laws. Where the fuck were the progressives on this? And then they're allowed to claim victory for things that were not victories. I mean, organizations in the U.S., I'm a board member on various organizations. We shared the responsibility too. And now we're shocked that Trump is president and we're traumatized. Give me a break. Get back to work. That's how I feel about it.
I just want to pick up on something that you said, we've talked about before. You said they're not doing anything wrong. Unless we've talked about this, the whole basic idea that there's nothing wrong with taking drugs. It's not wrong. It's not morally wrong. And I don't know whether it was Matt. Did you mention Portugal today in your? You know, and Portugal is, of course, better than the UK, and it's better than a lot of places. But it's still what they do is based on the premise that drug use is wrong. I just wish they'd gone a little bit, because they brought in this administrative sanction. Apparently no one has been sanctioned administratively. But it would have been nice if Portugal could have just said, okay, look, there is nothing wrong with drug use. You know what I mean? And when is that ever going to happen? Is some country going to say, yeah, it's not wrong?
Well, I think this is our job. We have to push. And part of pushing, the people who use drugs, or just people in general, any thinking person, I should say, we have to push now. But that also, whenever you come out of the closet about an activity that society views in these moral terms as they do drugs, you must be responsible. You cannot be. For example, sometimes I think about drug-using unions or these drug-using organizations. A drug user is not somebody who simply has problems with their drugs. And it seems to be the person who we think of as a drug user. No, the drug-using community is as diverse as any other community. But it really is incumbent upon us as drug users to be responsible. Even more responsible than many other people, because of the way our activity is viewed by the larger society. That's just a fact. So we have to be responsible. And many of us are. We volunteer, we pay our taxes, we take care of our children, we do all of these sorts of things. And then we have to take some risks as well. Push the envelope. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Another question from the audience? Yes?
I'm going to stand because I'm too short. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Jade.
So from like America, obviously they was able to vote if they want to legalize drugs. So with over here, to be honest, it's kind of like peed me off, because I had a look at my dad's like criminal record, and he was not arrested for one crime drug until after the war on drugs came out, and he had also been using drugs for about 20 years beforehand. How do we actually go about with getting the vote in this country to be able to vote on legalization? Because you're able to do it in like your country, people are actually going out there and saying we need something done. But here, all we're getting really are statistics. We're getting people, yes, they're going out, but we need people to actually go out more and say this is really what we want. We need people who are going to say, this is what we've been through. And obviously with people like me, we're too ashamed to say we've got parents who are drug addicts. We're ashamed to say we've got people who, like brothers and sisters, who are in prison constantly coming out of prison, and we feel like we can't do anything about it. So what advice would you give to those people who want to do something?
So, to be clear, in the United States, there's no voting to legalize drugs. There's only voting to legalize marijuana. So to be clear, in the United States, we are passing legislation. For example, that legislation that decreased the disparity between crack and powder cocaine. In that same legislation, we made harsher sentences for people who traffic in drugs. We made harsher sentences for whenever violence is involved in a drug-related crime. So, and then in our country also, we are now punishing heroin at much more severely than we had previously. So we are, in the United States, we're not as progressive as people think, but we do have the marijuana story and the people who have been pushing for marijuana legalization. I think one of the reasons, one of the major sort of driving forces behind that is that we have more marijuana users. So marijuana use has become more normalized than it certainly was. And so you can't vilify marijuana in the United States like you can with heroin, like you can with cocaine or these other things. You can continue to vilify those drugs because they have so few users compared to the larger number of users of marijuana. And so that helps in terms of people actually using and seeing that their experience and other people's experience are inconsistent with the rhetoric or with the exaggerations. Now, we say things about heroin. Like even here, I think I've heard someone say something about how marijuana is treated just like heroin is more dangerous. What the fuck? It certainly can be under certain conditions, but in other conditions, it's not true. And so even we adopt that misguided notion that heroin is far more dangerous than marijuana. That's not a universally true statement. We have to be more nuanced in those sorts of things. And so as I think about the UK's experience, one of the strategies used in the United States was to simply push marijuana, push medical marijuana, then recreational marijuana. That's a strategy that I think people use in the United States. It wasn't explicitly stated that way. But, you know, I worry about that too at some level. I worry about the fact that we are segregating our drug users such that we run the risk of putting users of certain drugs, pitting users of certain drugs against users of other drugs. I see that in the psychedelic community. I see that. So that's a bit troubling, but it's a strategy. Now, one of the things that I have learned is that I have a certain skill set. And my skill set does not usually include what people should do politically. In fact, I hate when scientists start worrying about politics. Because what it does, well, let me share a story with you. Maybe this will help. I was giving a talk in Geneva, the first time I gave a talk in Geneva. I presented evidence on methamphetamine, and I went through this whole thing about how methamphetamine was not as bad as it had been made out to be, and I had laid out the scientific evidence. And then at the end of the talk, I said that, you know, we should decriminalize drugs or based on this evidence. And then Ruth Dreyfus, who the former president of Switzerland, she stood up and asked the first question, and she went through the data, and she said, I don't understand how you got to decriminalization when you said most of the stuff we have been told was rubbish. And it doesn't support the exaggerations. So why aren't you arguing for legalization? That's where the data seems to lead you. And then I had to think about it. Why did I argue for decriminalization? Well, I argued for decriminalization because I was being political. And I was not being a scientist. And I got showed up by a politician. And it's the worst feeling in the world. So politics that's not my skill. So I don't know, but as a politician, what you should do. But as a scientist and someone who's out for truth, you should push the truth as how in terms of what drugs do and don't do. And then pushing the truth, once you push the truth, then the chips fall where they may. It's how I see it. So I'm not in the political game. But what I do think is that if alcohol is legal, then I don't understand why heroin isn't legal, based on the evidence.
Any more questions? Comments? Matt?
Carl, I wanted to talk about the potential impact of Trump on international diplomacy, because I remember being at the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. I was on the UK delegation at the moment where Bush left and the Obama people came in. And it was a huge transition. Having the US and Russia aligned together against progressive drug law reform is disastrous. I mean, it means nothing nothing moves, nothing shifts. And of course, we know that US policy is very limited around not giving out funding for needles, and now there's a whole series of problems. But the movement and flexibility that's taken place in the last 8 years in terms of international diplomacy has been massively freed up by the fact that the US have switched sides away from Russia back towards the progressives. Now, if Trump and Putin are going to cozy up in this sort of dictator fantasy that they have together, how do you see that impacting potentially on international drug policy, particularly as Trump is very explicit about the fact he's never smoked, he's never drunk, and he doesn't in any way do anything?
Wait, Trump said that? I thought he had the cocaine parties.
Well, I hear this, and then I also hear him going on about the fact that his brother was an alcoholic, and therefore he's never touched any drug at all. So he looks to me like he's on cocaine all the time. But I mean, I'm playing between his public statements and his my objective assessment of what he looks like.
Yeah. So you asked the question about, well, what does the Trump presidency mean for like international drug policy, given our experience with Bush and our experience with Obama? Deborah raised the issue about Brazil. Fabrice raised the issue about France. Usually in the U.S., we don't usually think about the impact of drug policy, our drug policy, or our way of thinking on the international community. But the earlier session with Deborah, Fabrice, and Michael, they laid out kind of how people have been taking the lead of the U.S. around the world, particularly in the Philippines, as you mentioned earlier. Well, I think that we can expect to see. I would reluctantly make the prediction that we can expect to see what happened during the Bush administration. But it really doesn't change your work. Under the Obama administration, one of the first things that the Obama administration did was they said, when they took office, no more war on drugs. And that's one of the first things they said. The war on drugs is a less than intelligent concept or something of that nature. So they had all the right verbal behavior. In fact, they adopted the language of harm reductionists. But they behaved the same. And so, thinking about Andrea's comment earlier, particularly when we think about those people who are just working their jobs and trying to take care of their family, thinking about people who don't think about this issue, it's better for them to have simple language and not be misled by the use of progressive words. And they know the score. So you know the score with Trump. It's better to know the score than people tell you pretty lies. That's how I think about it in order to be encouraged and to stay positive and go to work.
Robbie?
The recent development is a good example of misled democracy. You have one person that makes more votes than the other one, and the one who has lost wins. It's not the first time in the US. Bush was something similar at the time. And then it's also mixed with the idea of a nation state, the US as a nation. I'm asking myself since long time why no Calexit. California would be able to run its own state without the rest of the thing called the US.
So are you, Robert, are you suggesting that California leave the US? Is that what, yeah.
Well, I think the folks of Texas would be in line to leave too. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, you go to California and you see a large pocket of people who supported Trump as well. California is a frightening state too at times. Not all of it, of course. But it's the state that produced Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, a number of people. So it's the United States.
outside of certain pockets, New York City and other places, frankly, I don't go because they frighten me. So I don't know. I don't live in California. Deborah does, and she was saying about how she's happy there, and I'm happy to be in New York City. But we have our problems, and that's why we have our current president-elect.
Your comments about the popular vote, the winner of the popular vote, losing the election, it happens in this country quite frequently, actually.
It's just happened with Brexit,
Yeah, exactly.
Ireland voted no,
Yeah. So it's okay. So listen. Okay, one more quick question. It has to be quick, Fabrice.
Sorry, this was not a quick one. It's
Turn that mic off.
This is the French.
I'm slow and just begin to think about. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think when you're happy with Trump, it's because we are back in the moralistic debate.
Wait, you said happy with Trump? Let's correct that.
Yeah.
I didn't say I was happy with Trump.
That's what I understand from you, and because we are back in the moralistic debate, and I think that it's not possible to escape from the moralistic debate. I remember, Pat, that harm reduction long time tried to escape from this and said we don't want to say that drugs are good or drugs are bad. And in fact, it's impossible to escape from this. And what I learned from you, Carl, is that you said that we can say that drugs are good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that
book.
good people can take drugs. And this is maybe what you are denying to Obama, to don't have choose his camp in a war. And when you're not choosing your camp in a war, you're in a kind of collaboration with the enemy. So is this that you're happy with Trump because we're back in the moralistic debate?
Wow.
We've got 1 minute, Carl.
Yeah, wow. No, I think, to be clear, the thing that disturbed me, and it always happens when so the movement that elected Obama, there was the world economy crashed. All of these abuses, and people were upset. And so we in the United States elect our first black president. So it took quite a bit of, the world had to be turned upside down for that to happen, and it happened. And so we had this momentum, this force that we fucked up. We didn't take advantage of. That disturbs me. It disturbs me because people thought it was progress to simply elect a guy, and they judged him based on being elected. They even judged him based on being elected in Oslo when they gave him the Nobel Prize for doing nothing. And I'm afraid this happens with progressives. We act sometimes as if progress is linear. It's not. It's like this. But the fight has to be continuous. And so when we elect people who sometimes, based on their actions, I'm talking about results, based on the results are frauds, we go to sleep. And that concerns me. We won't go to sleep with Trump.
No.
So I'm excited about that, not about Trump.
Okay. Before we go, I'm sorry. Excuse me for fiddling with my phone, but it's got the names of all the people I want to thank. I was just worried I would miss some people now. I do want to thank our speakers because I think it's been a fantastic conference. Honestly, the speakers have been great. I want to thank you all for being here, for coming. I'd like to thank Lucy and Maddie and Nigel, the HIT staff, for doing what you do so well. I want to thank Craig and Neil, and Alan Matthews, who yesterday stuffed bags, and Alan, all your badges were cut by the fair hands of Alan Matthews. Thanks very much indeed. I want to thank John Derricott, who comes every year and does this filming for us. Thank you very much indeed, John. If you need any filming done, that's the man. And I want to thank especially Leaf Hunter, who's volunteered, took a day off work to do what he did today, running around with the microphone and generally being absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Leaf. Ken, please put your hand up. This is Ken from Martindale Pharma. Thank you. As I said this morning, we wouldn't be here without Martindale Pharma because this conference is not cheap to put on. So thank you, Ken, very much indeed. And that's it.
Can I just say one plug?
Sure.
Just one plug. I recently joined the board of the International Doctors for a Healthy Drug Policy. So if we have any physicians in the house, please check out that organization, trying to get physicians involved. Judith, yeah, Judith's in the house, right on. So please, if we have physicians in the house, please see Judith. All right, thank you.
1,300 doctors from over 100 countries, but we haven't managed to change the United Nations yet. See you at the Cavern, I hope, tonight. Okay, doors open at 8 o'clock. Thank you.